Coming up on Primetime News, South Korea's Red Cross pre-selects 500 candidates out of 66,000 war-separated family members for reunions next month. The final list, however, will include only a fifth of them. At a regional security forum in Seoul, President Park Geun-hye stresses the need of stabilizing peace on the Korean peninsula, urging Pyongyang to end its nuclear development program. Plus, job growth slows in South Korea as a sluggish domestic demand drags down the number of jobs in the retail sector. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Wednesday, September 9th. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us.
South Korea's Red Cross has begun the selection process for next month's reunions for war-separated families.
For the list arrangement procedures and other pressing issues surrounding the much-anticipated event, we turn to our Han Da-eun.
For some, it was a moment of joy. For others, there was only despair. South Korea's Red Cross has selected the 500 South Koreans who may get a chance to participate in a long-awaited round of inter-Korean family reunions set for October 20th to the 26th at North Korea's Mount Kumgang Resort. The lucky ones were selected at random through a computer-based lottery. However, the candidates were culled from a preliminary shortlist of people that were given priority based on their age, health, and whether they're seeking to meet immediate family or more distant relatives. But as lucky as they are, this is still not the final list of people who will get to meet their long-lost loved ones next month. Of the 500, only 100 will make it to the final list, which will be handed over to North Korea early next month. Only 200 Koreans from South and North will participate in the event. That is by far a number too small, given there are 66,000 survivors in South Korea alone who desperately want to see their relatives one last time before they die. So why only 200? Political watchers say it's because that's the number of people that Mount Kumgang Resort, where the reunions are mostly held, can accommodate at once. Some also point to the fact that Pyongyang reportedly conducts so-called ideological training sessions for its reunion participants. They assume it would be too much trouble for North Korea to carry out those sessions if the number grew too big. Since 2000, 19 inter-Korean family reunions have been held, and only 3,000 people in all are estimated to have met their long-lost relatives. Experts say a new government measure is desperately needed to ensure the reunions will happen on a regular basis in the future. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
Well, agreeing to disagree seems to be the norm among lawmakers, but the leaders of South Korea's main rival parties actually hailed yesterday's agreement on the upcoming round of reunions.
Both said it's a positive first step toward implementing a deal reached last month between the two Koreas. Kim Young-gil has more.
The leader of the ruling Saenuri party said it was wonderful that the two Koreas had agreed to hold family reunions for 200 war-separated families, adding his hope that the event would build momentum for better inter-Korean cooperation.
Our party will work toward holding reunions on a regular basis and increasing the number of people chosen from each side to reunite with their relatives. We hope this event will help bring peace and stability on the Korean peninsula and enhance bilateral relations.
He also suggested holding higher-level talks to prevent inter-Korean relations from worsening due to a possible missile launch by North Korea next month. October 10th marks the 70th anniversary of the foundation of the North's ruling Workers' Party. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy also welcomed the family reunion agreement, adding that South Korea should continue to work toward improving human rights in the North.
Human rights is a universal value. Therefore, South Korea should make efforts to improve and protect the North Korean people's human rights. We urge this Henry Party to cooperate in passing the North Korean Human Rights Act to promote basic human rights.
He went on to say that promoting human rights in North Korea should be done to substantially improve the lives of the North Korean people. The act has been pending in parliament for 10 years. The opposition chief also urged the government to continue working toward inter-Korean dialogue and exchanges to maintain the hard-won compromise of last month's inter-Korean agreement. Kim Young-gyun, Arirang News.
A multinational security mechanism in Northeast Asia is key to a lasting peace and stability in the region. That's according to President Park Geun-hye during a keynote speech to the 2015 Seoul Defense Dialogue on Wednesday. Take a look.
저는 한반도에 평화를 정착시키는 일이 동북아와 유라시아를 넘어 인류 공용의 미래를 완성하는 마지막 퍼즐이 될 수 있다고 믿습니다.
In that sense, she stressed that reunification of the two Koreas will be the fundamental solution to North Korea's nuclear development and will mark the end of the 20th century's history of Cold War. The three-day-long Seoul Defense Dialogue, launched by South Korea's Defense Ministry back in 2012, is a vice-ministerial multilateral conference designed to discuss issues related to the Korean reunification, the maritime crisis in East Asia, and cyber defense cooperation. Some 250 senior defense policymakers, military executives, and academics from roughly 30 countries and 4 international organizations came together this year under the theme 70 Years of the Post-World War II Era and the Division of Korea. This is the first time that the South Korean leader has attended the event. Now, more evidence has been brought up on how North Korea continues to keep its nuclear ambitions very much alive, though. Suspicious activity has been spotted in 2 areas in Yongbyon, North Korea's main nuclear site. Lee Ji-won reports.
Satellite images and analysis from U.S.-based North Korean monitoring website 38 North show trucks loaded with cargo. The vehicles appear to have been going in and out of the building at the Yongbyon Nuclear Research Center, which houses a 5-megawatt reactor. Another image shows vehicle tracks and trucks around the radiochemical laboratory complex. This is where plutonium is turned into the raw material for building nuclear weapons. 38 North says it's impossible to determine the exact reason for the activity, but one possible explanation could be that North Korea is unloading spent fuel rods from the reactor for the purpose of producing new plutonium. It says a full core of spent fuel rods at the reactor could produce enough plutonium for up to 2 additional nuclear bombs. The website says the latest developments are concerning and should be monitored closely by the international community. It's thought North Korea has collected enough plutonium-based fissile material from Yongbyon over the years to arm up to 10 small nuclear bombs. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
In other news, China has sent a congratulatory message to North Korea celebrating the regime's establishment. It is widely seen as a friendly gesture, but one North Korea expert has implied that relations between the two may not be as friendly as they seem. Connie Kim explains further.
China's leader has sent a congratulatory message to the North Korean leader to mark the 67th anniversary of the founding of the North Korean regime. The North Korea Central News Agency reported Wednesday the message was sent by Chinese President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang to Kim Jong-un and his top aides. The message is one sent by China every year, but what's drawing extra attention to this year's message is that for the first time, China said it is seeking stable, long-term bilateral ties with the North. That may be so, but one expert said there may be a way to persuade China to change its policy of supporting the North. Doug Bando of the Cato Institute said in a World Post article from last week, recounting his discussion with a Chinese scholar, that closer cooperation between the U.S. and China could change the calculus in the region. The scholar outlines the major problems between the North and China, with denuclearization chief among them, and proposes trilateral talks with the U.S. as one way to get there. China is North Korea's closest traditional ally, but bilateral ties have long been frayed with Pyongyang's nuclear tests in 2013 and its missile tests. Reflecting Pyongyang's uncomfortable feelings towards Beijing, the North state-run Rodong Sinmun newspaper posted Xi's message on the second page of its Wednesday edition, while congratulatory messages from Russia and Cuba decorated the front page. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
A UN Special Rapporteur is currently in Seoul for further research on North Korea's dire human rights situation. He said the UN is paying close attention to the human rights abuses that are still rampant in the north. Hwang Ji-hye reports.
North Korea's labor export has been brought up to the attention of the United Nations. That's according to UN Special Rapporteur on North Korean human rights, Marzuki Darusman.
That's now being brought to the attention of the UN since last March, and therefore it will then now become let us say, an issue, a matter to be addressed from here on by the UN.
As many as 150,000 North Koreans are believed to be toiling under harsh conditions in around 40 countries, including Qatar and Russia. The workers reportedly receive just 10% of their pay, with the rest going to the North Korean leadership. North Korea is one of the few nations in the world that refuses to join the International Labor Organization. Mr. Darusman said putting an end to this state-sponsored labor export will deliver a double blow to the regime.
Addressing this issue is addressing a major source of hard currency for the regime. And therefore, it is also a pressure point on the North Koreans in this regard.
With more than a year since the release of the landmark UN report on North Korean human rights, Mr. Darusman called for concrete actions.
It is now time to consider the concrete measures that should be taken to ensure accountability for those crimes and to set up a broader process of transitional justice.
Mr. Darusman will be back in Seoul in November before he submits a new report on North Korea's human rights situation to the UN in March next year. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Moon Jae-in, the chief of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party, said today that he would give up his post if the party fails to make progress toward a series of proposed reforms. Moon said he would take action if the reform proposals fail to get the party's approval at a general meeting next week. The NPAD wants to successfully implement a package of proposals to pull the party together. The party has been mired in deep factional strife after successive defeats in major elections. Members of minority factions suspect that major party figures, including Moon, intend to exploit the reform proposals for their own political interests.
August was not a good month for job seekers in South Korea as the number of new jobs added fell below the 300,000 mark for the first time in 4 months. Job creation lost ground due to layoffs by wholesalers and retailers hit by sluggish demand. For the numbers and more, we turn to our Kim Min-ji.
Labor market conditions in Korea are far from improving. According to Statistics Korea, the number of new jobs the country added fell below the 300,000 mark in August for the first time since April. The downturn is attributed to losses in the wholesale and retail sectors as they reel from sluggish demand.
The wholesale and retail sectors posted losses in job creation, causing the number of new posts created to fall.
Meanwhile, the unemployment rate for people between the ages of 15 and 29 came to 8% in August, down from 9.4% a month earlier, which is attributed to more students finding part-time jobs during the summer break. Despite this improvement, the rate is still more than double the nation's overall jobless rate of 3.4%. Following the government's drive to help alleviate the youth unemployment problem, the country's major corporations, public institutions, and banks have made plans to hire more workers. This as more and more adopt the wage peak system, which means the salaries of workers nearing retirement age would be lowered gradually and the money saved would be directed to hiring young workers. But experts say while there might be more jobs down the road, the numbers don't actually imply positive results as they appear to.
The money being saved from the wage peak system isn't being used to create quality jobs. Instead, a majority are non-regular positions like internships, so new hires will return to the job market in a matter of years, creating a vicious cycle.
Experts also say rather than focusing on short-term outcomes by expanding the number of new hires, companies need to invest in novel growth engines and markets that will naturally lead to more jobs. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea's tourism industry is still feeling the effects of the MERS outbreak, which prompted future travelers to cancel trips here in droves. Fortunately, experts say the sector should recover by next month. Park Se-young fills us in.
Korea's tourism income has dropped over 10% in recent months, mainly due to the outbreak of Middle East respiratory syndrome. According to statistics released by the Bank of Korea, spending by foreign tourists in the first half of the year was $5.5 billion. This marks an 11% decline from the second half of 2014, when the total was $6.2 billion. It's the biggest drop since 2009, when the nation's tourism sector was hit by a weak Japanese yen. The number of Chinese visitors has been cut in half from nearly 620,000 in May to 315,000 in June. Prior to that, the number of Chinese tourists had been on the rise. The number of Japanese visitors also dropped in the same period from nearly 190,000 to just over 100,000. Although the number of inbound travelers bounced back to normal levels in August, most experts say it's a weak recovery for vacation season. Tourists are also spending less, slowing Korea's tourism growth. According to the nation's tourism account, the average spending per tourist this year up to August was roughly $1,200 per person, a 4.4% drop from last year. But the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute forecasts a recovery early next month, with Chinese airlines having restored the number of flights to Korea in time for China's 7-day National Day holiday from October 1st to 7th. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
For more than 3 decades, Switzerland hosted the World Economic Forum every January to discuss a diverse global agenda. A younger summer version of that forum, so-called Summer Davos Forum, held since 2007, is now on in China. Our Park Ji-won, who's attending the 3-day session, follows this report from the Chinese city of Dailan.
It's a global forum on innovation, science, and technology. Over 1,700 attendees, global business leaders, renowned scholars, and decision-makers from about 90 countries have all gathered in the eastern Chinese harbor city of Dalian to attend the 9th annual meeting of the New Champions. The annual Summer Summit is an extension of the World Economic Forum, and these sessions put more emphasis on technological advances to seek solutions for the new challenges facing the global community. This year's theme is charting a new course for growth. Co-chair Carlos Moedas says this year's forum will highlight digital technologies as we are at a tipping point of a merger between the physical and digital world.
The digital world will be not on top, but parallel to the physical world, and that we will have this merge in between what's physical and actually what's digital. I think that's the big leverage for the future in terms of innovation and creating the future itself.
The forum's over 155 sessions delve into diverse topics from food security to artificial intelligence, and participants can broaden their understanding and share their expertise.
I really enjoy coming to these meetings because I learn a great deal about other areas besides my own. And the nice thing about artificial intelligence is it can be applied to everything. There's hardly an area of human endeavor where AI doesn't have an application. And so every conversation I have, I learn something really interesting.
On the sideline of the forum, there are exhibitions like this one showcasing the latest in robotics. This robot camera is a collision-tolerant drone that can help rescuers find survivors. It was inspired by the Fukushima disaster, where neither ground robots or flying robots functioned properly because of collisions.
Search and rescue is one of the big applications, but it's for now mostly used in inspection. Inspection of energy infrastructure, oil and gas infrastructure, the underdeck of bridges, water pipes, things like that. All those places where you don't want to send a human because it's a dangerous place and an inaccessible place that costs a lot of money.
And Chinese Premier Li Keqiang will give a special address at the forum's official opening ceremony scheduled for Thursday. Park Ji-won, Arirang News, Dalian.
And now for the top international headlines, we turn to our Bruce Harrison at the News Center.
Today's focus plan unveiled. The European Union Commission leader proposes how to distribute refugees. Trouble on the tarmac, a plane burns on a Las Vegas runway, and the longest reign, Queen Elizabeth II, sets a record for her time on the throne.
First, Bruce, how does the distribution of refugees throughout Europe break down?
Well, placing all these refugees, Daniel, and economic migrants is not going to be an easy task. EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker is asking 22 EU states to take in 160,000 people. During an address to the European Parliament in Strasbourg, Juncker called on the countries to open their arms and take action.
The European Union is not in a good state. There is a lack of Europe in the EU, and there is a lack of union in the European Union. We have to stop this.
The quotas aren't clear yet, as the new plan has to be endorsed at a meeting of EU leaders next week. So far, Germany has agreed to take in more than 30,000, France 24,000, and Spain 15,000. Poland will reportedly be asked to receive 12,000, but its president has said it could take up to 2,000. Besides EU members, Australia is one country that said it would accept 12,000. Juncker's plan only places a large amount of asylum seekers already in Europe, but they're still coming in droves, with 800,000 expected to arrive in the bloc this year. To deal with the flow, Juncker said the Commission will present a package early next year to legalize migration. Passengers fled from a plane stopped on a Las Vegas runway as the engine burned, clouding the fuselage with smoke. All 172 people on board escaped the British Airways flight Tuesday, and several were taken to a hospital with minor injuries. The Federal Aviation Administration says the London-bound flight came to a halt during takeoff after one of its engines burst into flames. One person on board tweeted, "Passengers rushed to the front, creating panic." Another said the fire melted several of the plane's windows. Those on the flight have praised the crew for their quick efforts to evacuate the plane. According to passengers, the crew immediately opened the exit doors once the fire had been spotted. The cause of the fire is under investigation. The engine was apparently made by General Electric, which should not respond when asked for comment about the fire. In a few hours, Elizabeth II becomes the longest-serving monarch of the United Kingdom. She's set to surpass the reign of her great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria, who spent just over 63 years and 7 months on the throne. Those close to the Queen say she's fairly uninterested in the landmark, believing it represents little more than her long life and her father's early death. Many are celebrating the milestone throughout the UK, though some say her long tenure is a sign of a need for reform. But economists can agree on one thing: the royal family has been a financial boon for the state.
A huge proportion of the value there comes particularly from demand in Asia for royally endorsed products in fashion and sporting goods and luxury food and that sort of thing.
At 89, the Queen is also the oldest living monarch in Britain. And that's your international news for now. Have a great night.
We had beautiful blue and clear skies in the afternoon today, marked by a big temperature difference between the morning and the afternoon. And it seems like this early autumn weather pattern will continue for tomorrow under mostly sunny skies, which is a good sign for farmers, as the conditions are perfect for harvesting plumper and sweeter fruits just in time for the upcoming Chuseok holiday. And tomorrow's forecast will be similar as today. The temperature roller coaster will continue with gaps of 10 degrees Celsius here in the capital tomorrow. So be sure to dress accordingly to avoid catching a cold. On that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for tomorrow. Seoul will start off at 16 but will rise to 29, while Daegu and Gwangju climb up to 28, and Busan will top out at 27. And as for the other parts, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 28 and 25, while Dokdo peaks at 20. But actually, warm afternoon is forecast to last for one more day, as the temperature will start to drop as we head into the mid-September. So enjoy the warmth while it's here. That's all for the weather. Good night.
And that's primetime news for you today. Thank you for staying with us.
We'll be back same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.